Welcome to Wellbeing Wednesdays, brought to you by the Tulane University Counseling Center. I'm one of your co-hosts, Shawna Foose. I am a staff therapist at our center, joined as always by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jinaki Flint. I'm a staff psychologist here at the Counseling Center, and we are joined today by two wonderful guests who I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, and then we'll get started.
Hi, I'll go first. I'm Fiona Chambers, fourth year MD MPH student.
I'm Millicent Olawale, also fourth year MD MBA student.
Awesome. Welcome. So
thank you.
Today's episode, we're talking about the Black medical student. And so I have so many questions, but I won't exhaust you. But one of the things that that we're hoping that you are able to share is some of the challenges of what you do every day, and some of what are the things that are glimmers for you. What are the things that brighten your day? Also, what are some of the suggestions that you have for how mental health professionals, such as myself, on campus and Shawna, how can we better support you? How can we support you? And what you would like to see from an interaction or relationship with a mental health professional?
Absolutely, that sounds great.
So maybe let's start with like the glows and the
so the glows and the dims.
Yeah.
Okay. Fiona, do you want to go ahead and take that first?
All right, I'll just go first. I think a glow for me is always when other Black people, whether in the hospital, whether it's like patients, family members, staff, cafeteria friends, see you and they're like, "You go, girl, you go, guy," and they're like rooting for you, and everyone's rooting for you. That's always a big glow. And I think one of the grows, and it's just going to follow you lifelong, is that I'm not disillusioned to the fact that I'll probably have to work twice as hard just to be seen as half as good as my white counterparts.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and echo what Fiona said. I think that's definitely one of the glows is just people notice you, whether it be patients or just other staff, at the hospital. And it's always encouraging when they're excited for you. You're just kind of going about your day and someone nudges you on the shoulder, or something gives you a thumbs up, or you see, patients in the cafeteria or something like that, and they're just super excited to see you in your scrubs and your stethoscope. It really brightens my day and gives me a little bit of added motivation to continue, forward. And then in terms of the negatives, I'd say pretty much the same thing. I think perception is tough sometimes. Me being a Black male, I feel like I have to think about, should I wear my glasses today so I don't appear as, I don't know, like, you think about things you can do to not stand out in a negative way as much, or maybe I'm very conscious about like covering up my tattoo, when I go on the first day, stuff like that. So, but that's life, and that's something that Fiona and I have, I'm sure, dealt with for a while. So nothing new there.
Okay, great. So the second part to that is, what would you like to see? How would you like to, do you engage in, I don't know, I don't want to ask you about your mental health background, but what would you like to see from a mental health professional to address your specific need as a Black mental health medical student?
I think just having this conversation, I think creating a space to have this conversation, I think is important, and something that is, I appreciate, because sometimes the hardest part is just to start the conversation, and in the Black community a lot, it's kind of taboo to talk about stuff like this, especially for men, and I'll be the first to say that I've had my share breakdowns through med school already, so we're not exempt from that, and it's good to talk about it. And so I think having an outlet, a place where you feel comfortable, you can go and talk about stuff is very important.
I think for me, So we're applying for the residency, and all of them have like this wellness curriculum, and I'm really trying to tease out, what does wellness mean? I mean, for me, that's more than just free froyo and massages, or even coloring. Like, did I tell you I want to color? I don't want to color. And then the opposite of that is there's like, oh, there's signs or there's numbers that you could call for like a one-time free counseling event, like on the way extreme end of the other spectrum. I'm like, I don't necessarily need that at this moment. What are the steps to make sure that I don't need to go that far? And like, for me, I realize that's more time off to do the things that I want to do. So when I think about wellness, I don't think you guys necessarily need to do anything extra than what you're doing, other than make you known that the resources out there and available, and maybe more than what, I don't know how much Tulane offers, how many free sessions they offer, because it is expensive, I think, to like get a therapist, number one. But the events that you can do in between that, I think is more like a personal self journey. Like, I discovered journaling works for me as my outlet. So I think everyone just needs to find their thing.
Yeah. Just to put it out there, so students at Tulane can use up to 12 individual therapy sessions per academic year through the counseling center. And some people need 12 and some people need 2, and some people are somewhere in between. But you know, that's kind of up to the student and the clinician to kind of tease that apart.
See, I didn't know that. That would be so useful. That's like 1 a month. That's like a whole year.
Yeah.
Right, if you go bi-weekly.
Right?
Right. Yeah, and we have a ton of groups too. So we also have a lot of groups, and we're building that out. We currently have graduate student groups running, one that's a mindfulness group. So it's just all about skills-based, like building those mindfulness skills, which is a critical piece of healing for medical students and all of the literature. It's like, do some of that, you know, get in touch with the body. So yeah, so we offer a lot of groups here, skills-based and support. And we have those 12 sessions that you can do too.
It makes me wonder, Fiona and Millicent too, if you guys can take yourselves back to your first year of medical school here and what it might have felt like, you know, during that first year. It's so rigorous, right? And you do anatomy lab first thing. And I know for some students, that's a heavy thing. You know, was there something that, had you known that we existed and you could have accessed us, do you think that that would have been something that would have been helpful and supportive to you?
Yeah.
Or would you haven't had the time?
Who goes first?
Right.
No, I think so. I think it would have been, well, let me say this. I knew. So I'm not going to, I knew that the resources were there. And we can talk about this, I guess, as the show develops, but I actually took advantage of those services a couple weeks ago for the first time. And so that was very helpful, but I knew that they existed. I just kind of didn't think that I needed it. And, you know, yeah, so that was kind of my story.
Okay.
Yeah. And most students don't. You know, Rachel Hardiman, a researcher, did a study on first year Black medical students from a very large pool of students, first years. And what part of that study was really distressing, I'm pretty sure for them, because the hypothesis was that this kind of high racial identity would somehow be a protective factor, which it is across many other areas, you know, risk behavior, academic achievement, and so forth. But what they found was students with high racial identity actually didn't fare well mentally in medical school programs, particularly that first year. And they have some hypotheses for why that is. Because one, when you get into that environment, the culture then is that environment. And if the culture is predominantly majority population, then there's a sense of isolation that comes with that. There's outright discrimination. And then there's burnout because you're inhibiting parts of yourself as you're trying to still move forward and do this volumes of work. And so that actually acts as kind of like a barrier to you getting the support you need too. And so there's some things that when we talk about solutions to that we'll talk about how to kind of build that in, some things you may already be doing. But I wondered what you thought about walking into programs and if that actually, if you actually felt some of that when you first got here.
Well, I think we're pretty lucky with the amount of Black students that we have in our class. I mean, 3 years above us recruited us, like our friend who's also our classmate's brother basically spearheaded it, and there was only 2 of them that year, and I think 1 the year below them, and then after that started growing. So I mean, out of 200, it's not a lot, but it's enough where I feel comfortable compared to being at other schools. So I think that was very good on our part, and it helped to mitigate some of those feelings. And I think for me personally, it wasn't that you come here and you're Black. It's more like I got here and realized most of everyone's parent is a doctor. I think that's what tripped me up. Like, oh, my parents aren't doctors. Like, what the hell am I doing here? My parents didn't even go to college. So
Right.
I think that was my issue.
Yeah, and that is listed as highly protective for Black med students coming in, is to have a support group of other Black med students.
Right.
So you can get a chance to interact with peers and also your professional elders.
Absolutely. Super important. Yeah, so I guess for me on that same question, you know, I have gone to predominantly white schools my entire life. So to be honest, coming in, it's something I thought about in the back of my mind, but I felt regardless of the situation, I'd be okay because it's what I'm used to. I'm used to being the minority or the only person that looks like me in the class. So that was kind of my initial thought.
Okay, so you had some of that kind of already built in.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right. Okay, so you mentioned peer support earlier. How has that deepened your sense of purpose in the work that you do?
What do you mean? Oh, do you have an answer?
So when you have a bunch of people kind of moving together as a collective,
Right.
Has that been helped to deepen what you're doing here and deepen your own work and your sense of pride in what you're doing, having that group and feeling that you're all moving together, that sense of belonging and connection?
Absolutely. I think that we all talk about one, like, in, you know, not letting each other down, kind of like we're all in this together. You know, we got to lift each other up and be there for each other. But also you're aware now about the role that you're in. So even though I think we are still very much trying to get somewhere, we also realize that there are people below us, whether it be like high school, college, who are also looking up to us. Some of us have siblings who are in that, you know, age range, and just people in general. And so, you know, there's definitely a sense of more of a sense of purpose. Like, I'm not just doing this for myself, you know, like this, I need to, maybe the people that whatever was missing for me, maybe I can be that for the people coming up.
Yeah. That's great. What would you say to a student that's looking to go to medical school? What would you say to them that is the progeny that's coming behind you? What would be your advice to them?
You don't need to major in biology. Major in what you like. I think that's so important. And if you fail physics and all that, just try again. Like, nothing angers me more looking back on all the people who gave up, would have been good doctors over something like organic chemistry and physics, because we don't even use that. And it's just so sad to me that they have to like go through all these weeding out for nothing, really. So
yeah, absolutely. I failed organic chemistry when I first took it. And it's something, I'm saying that now, another thing I think is important is that in medicine in general, there's people aren't as forthcoming with their failures, and it's just part of the culture, I think, in general. But it's not conducive to mental well-being, I'll tell you that. And so I've made it a purpose. Sometimes I overshare, but I do that because I know that I looked for these things, you know, like who has a GPA similar to mine, who also might have failed organic chemistry, and you don't find those types of things. And so whenever I have an opportunity to talk to people coming up, I want to say, hey, yes, I failed organic chemistry. I also got a D in physics at one point. Like, there was a lot of things that I did that if given the opportunity again, I would have done a little bit differently. But I'm still here, and you can too. And so I think that's very important.
When I tell you both, this is golden, this advice, because I will tell you, I've worked at 4 different schools doing college counseling, and organic chemistry is probably the #1 subject and I am doing interventions around. And so hearing this is like, I just hope every student look at this show today. Thank you so much for saying those things, because I think they definitely need to be heard. And you brought up a very important point, that people aren't as forthcoming about feeling that they're struggling, about their struggles. And that is a mental health issue. And part of the opening up, part of the healing is being able to say, hey, I need the help. Because you come in with this imposter phenomenon, or this real world background and history of, like, I think, Fiona, you mentioned earlier about feeling like you have to work twice as hard, that kind of racially socialized messaging that we get. And it really does have an impact on the work that we do, and our mindset, and stigmas around really needing help with school, and also mental health assistance. Right. It seems weak, like, oh, I'm giving up because I need that help, and I need, to go talk to somebody about this overwhelming anxiety.
It also speaks to the value of mentorship, right? Like, yes. That it would have meant so much if someone above you who you could identify with said, don't worry about organic chemistry. It's not the end of the road on your way to becoming a physician, and I wonder, if that's a facet where, more formal mentorship could have. Is there any kind of like a mentoring program through the medical school that you know of?
Yeah.
Formal mentoring?
Yeah, like is there anything set up where, like, a 4th-year mentor?
Will you do mentorship?
I think Millicent would be best.
No, I would say we actually just started one, because I have a mentee who's a first-year student now, and I'm trying to think. I feel like there's been an informal one through the Student National Medical, like our Tulane chapter, at least within our own group, where we try to set people up. It's been informal, but yet I think we've covered a lot of people. So we've been able to make sure that we get a lot of the first years coming in. And I think this year I actually got a form, that said, hey, we want to connect you guys with Ms. Horn, I think, had sent out a form. So I want to say that that's something that's up and running now.
That's cool.
That's really great.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn from our peers, right? And we're just looking to our big brothers and sisters, really, who can.
They've been through it. We've been through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I encourage you to keep creating that village, that culture, because it is important for the young ones to see what the elders are doing.
Absolutely.
And to see the struggle, and to hear the stories,
right.
And to point it in that direction, no matter what it is. You have a sense of, even though you went to white schools, you do have a sense of yourself as a Black person.
Absolutely.
And what that may mean in the world, and what that may mean in medical school. And so it's important for them to hear the stories of how you came to be, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, the glow, as Shawna said earlier. So can
I just add a quick point? As you said, the story for like the whole struggle. Everyone loves a good struggle story. So embrace your struggle. It makes you look so much better in those statements that you're writing. So I think instead of us looking at that as a detriment, we need to like own that as one of our like superpowers. Like, we got a good story that we can tell. And that story will take you places.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. And it's part of our ancestry. It's part of our history, to be able to tell stories and heal through storytelling. And so that is critically important, that struggle story, right? And I think normalizing our struggle, normalizing what we go through to get there, we're normalizing mental health, right? And not seeing it as an illness, right? So normalizing that by telling those stories and being bold about it is really helpful to ourselves and to those people who are kind of looking at us as, here's where I want to be. I know when I was in grad school, I'm not doing anatomy, but kind of sort of on the mind. But it was really important to have mentors. It's what got me through a lot of times. And so I think that in this particular environment, it would just be highly valuable to have regular contact with you guys in that way. So thank you for sharing that stuff. Those stories are important.
And speaking of the story and kind of looking to your mentors, I wondered, and Fiona and I were talking about this before we started the episode, you know, you all are fourth year students, you're going through your residency application and interviews, and other people have done that before you, but no one has done it during a pandemic.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering, like, what are the different pieces of the puzzle? Because I have a feeling that maybe the class behind you might have to do this during at least some version of this pandemic. I just wonder if what the other impacts are.
I was just thinking about that earlier today. I had an interview earlier this morning, and I had I had a crazy time with all the audio and stuff. And it was my third interview and the first time that I've had any of these issues. But I was just thinking, like, to myself, like, wow, like I started thinking about, okay, this is the advice I'm going to give to the people coming behind me already, because like they got me this time, but not moving forward. But it's it's easy to get frustrated. But schools are very understanding of the situations, that happen, and you move forward and you live and learn. So, but it is definitely unique, and I'm learning as I go, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that'll be your story.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The flexibility that this takes, and that ability to really adjust in the moment, right? If it's a technological problem or any other barrier really that you're encountering, just takes so much flexibility and so much more energy than those in-person interviews.
Right.
Yeah. So we're even more grateful that you were able to come here today with all that going on.
More time on the Zoom.
Yes.
That's been the positive side of Zoom. I think it's kind of allowed us to maybe stretch ourselves a little too thin, because I was definitely on Zoom the other day for like 12 hours almost straight, like just doing back-to-back stuff. But the flip side, though, is that, I'm not in New Orleans right now. I'm in Austin, Texas. So like Zoom allows us to be able to still meet together and do this. So yes. I'm grateful for that, for sure.
That's awesome.
Watch those timestamps, though.
I know. Right.
Giving the right time from the time zones.
Oh yeah, that's what's kind of stressful too.
So do you have either of you or both of you have a regimen built into your day, or where you take care of yourselves? What is your kind of go-to self-care that's not about drawing and froyo?
I'll let you handle this, Fiona.
I had a better regimen during COVID times when I was forced to stay inside. I made sure I put myself on a regimen. And now I've just like let myself go now. I'm like free to do whatever. We're getting back on the gym thing like every other day. And what I've been doing, this is not a regimen at all. I've just been doing all the tourist things that I never got done. So I went to the aquarium last week, went to the zoo last month. Just those things that I put off. I realized I put off so many things. I'm like, I'll do that fourth year. And now everything is gone. So
it's like a fourth year bucket list.
Yeah.
Before I finish at Tulane Medical School, I'm going to do all these things.
Never know. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty awesome. Okay, so I heard you guys say that pretty much just being able to be here and hold a space for students is the decent way to be for mental health professionals on campus, the counseling center. And we also have a bunch of outreach programming that we do as well. And what would be some of the things that you may want us to come and share with you as mental health professionals doing a community engagement with you?
I think examples of success stories is always helpful. I know for me, if I can be honest, so I just took step 2 exam, which is like the second board exam, and I had a very tough time. I was supposed to take it back in May. I got canceled twice. My MBA program, I have classes for that, and it just became a whole mess. And I was just, the day before my test, I had to end up canceling it. And I was just like, oh, this is, it's messing with all my plans for residency applications and what needs to be in by what time. And so I called one of our career advisors, and she told me a story about another, I guess this was 3 years ago now, who had a similar situation. And she had gotten permission from that person to talk about his information. So it wasn't just like a generic story. It was like, such and such dealt with this. He is now here. Here's his number. You can give him a call. And I was like, oh, wow. And that was awesome. That really kind of, put me, and I talked to him on the phone the next day, and I was like, okay, I'm good, and then I set up my CAPS appointment and did all that stuff. And so I think it's maybe finding people who are like myself. I will say this to whoever I end up talking to, I have no problem with people like using me as an example or giving people my contact information if anyone needs to talk about something, because it always helps to talk to somebody who's gone through exactly what you're going through. And so being able to have concrete examples of people who have done this in certain situations, I think is super helpful.
Absolutely. You need that representation is important.
Right.
Yeah. What about you, Fiona?
I think maybe it might have been useful to have an opt-out, a one-time opt-out free session where you're kind of forced to go. That way, you'll know what it's about, and then you can continue if you need to, rather than you having to take the initiative and do it yourself. That would have been, or that still can be very useful. And to follow up on what Millicent had said, and you can use this for your interviews, what I've been asking, one of the questions to all the program directors is tell me about a time you had a resident who really struggled, or a resident you're most proud of because they struggled and you got them to XYZ place. I need to hear those stories just so I know that not everyone here is thriving and doing well their entire 3 years or even off the bat. I need to find my struggle stories to know I'll be okay.
Great question. I'm going to take them.
That's a good question.
I feel like there's a workshop, Jinaki, struggle stories or something. There's a theme emerging.
Well, that's part of the village. That's part of the building of that is doing that. Do it as an indigenous practice of, we can, we put the jargon on it, but that's what's happening. You guys are engaged in healing already, right? And in healing modalities.
Right.
So you're already starting this process of creating that collective, and everything is leading back to that. Every question, it seems, it always leads back to, I need to see people who look like me who are doing this. I'm talking to people who look like me who are doing this. This is what I'm giving them. And so that creates a powerful structure, actually. And in all of the mental health research about Black medical students, there's a dearth of it, but there's some rich research. It all talks about this very thing that you're already doing. So yeah, kudos.
Thank you.
Yeah, and even being here with us today, this gives us just another opportunity to put this out to our community so that others can benefit from your experience and maybe see themselves in you.
Absolutely.
It's really powerful.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. This is very excited about it.
Yeah.
Jinaki, did you have another question for them?
I was just gonna ask if there was anything that they may have thought about that they would like for us to answer.
About anything.
Did you come with anything? No questions for
prepared.
us, huh? You guys are doing just fine.
That is the wrong answer.
Is that for us especially, that's one of the things we get on every interview is oh, do you have any questions for us? We've got all these pre-made questions that we have, and then right now I'm just okay. Obviously there's a lot of stuff that I think we want to know. I think it's also important for people to kind of know the warning signs, because I know, for myself, I would definitely, I want to use the right words here. I never really had any, I don't want to say issues, but mental health was something that I never really paid much attention to be honest, just because I was I had a very stable family, home life, just in general, pretty positive, I like to think. And so I never really struggled with that. And when it hit me, it just kind of hit me, and so I think But when I look back, I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure there were probably some warning signs leading up to that. So I'm curious, for you guys, what do you guys see in terms of students kind of coming in? Generally, like, what are some of the warning signs? Maybe some of the ones that are not as obvious that people tend to kind of just brush under the rug, but ends up unraveling at some point and being a big deal.
Well, the first thing I feel like I want to say is it's really common for folks to think, I don't have a reason to have issues. I come from an intact family, and I've been, we're okay, right? I don't have a big trauma, or and that can all be true, and you can still come to a point in your life where you might need just some support, and so sometimes I think just being able to say to yourself, in spite of my my lovely upbringing, I may need to go talk to somebody. And then I think warning signs, Jinaki, functioning, impact to functioning, right? Like, how's your sleep? How's your appetite?
Definitely that.
Yeah.
Yes. So warning shots are definitely about, the big piece that you can see that are glaring is really when it starts to impact functioning. So you start to procrastinate a lot. You start to feel like really not motivated. Work starts slipping. You start to get behind more and more because some of the warning shots are silent. So you have to really be like, if your friend is suddenly that like to kind of hang out when you guys could hang out, suddenly they stop wanting to hang out. And that happens over time. You start to just pay attention to that. Or if that's you, where you're like, I don't just feel like it. I don't really, we call that, anhedonia, which is not really kind of taking pleasure in things you normally would have. So that just kind of looks like the person that usually is the first person to say, let's go get a drink. And they're like, or let's go get tea or whatever it is, coffee, suddenly not wanting to do anything with anyone. So there's this kind of sense of isolation. That's that kind of shutdown response where people start to disconnect. And then you have people that may be on the other side of that, where they're really hyper aroused and they get really irritable. Like, they usually are pretty even. And then you say something to them and they're like biting off your head. Like, it's like you can't say anything right to that person suddenly. And they just kind of, they're not comfortable with anything. They start to complain a lot. Sometimes it's somatic, particularly with persons of color. They're going to have this incessant stomach ache, this incessant headache, but you don't know they don't have a history of migraine or gastro issues, or some kind of body ache. Now, the body ache could be real, because if you're really, really stressed, we all know that's going to be stored energy in your joints. And so those types of things are going to be happening. And then if you look at severity, how has it deepened over time? In frequency, how often does it happen, right? And duration, how long is it happening each time, right? Usually, like for things like depression, it's like in a 2-week span, anxiety, 2 weeks to a month, things like that. And so you want to just kind of pay attention to those things, and then what the person isn't saying to you, because sometimes people will smile and, oh, everything's good. And then sometimes there's an incongruous smile. So there's this kind of, this incongruent affect. So they're smiling as they're telling you some real horrible story, and you're like, that sounds horrible. Like, and so they're trying to, we use all of these things as, it helps us to survive, right? So we're using these defensive tactics to try to actually soothe the body, to kind of calm it down. So we'll kind of do this kind of incongruent, like, oh, smile, right? And so just being aware of those types of things can be very helpful. And then every now and then checking in with that friend, checking in with your friends. You have your village, and checking in with them to see how they're doing. Maybe you could have a regular talk about people. How are you experiencing this? Are you feeling burned out? That's how you feel burned out. Your body's going to feel very tired because this is diminished and this is getting, right? But you're still working, like it's still at top speed. Right. And so it's a drag. And so as you start to drag on, right, you feel that. And so counting over days, how that's impacting your work academically, occupationally, socially, because it does, usually it covers all three. You're going to be procrastinating, your interpersonal relationships are going to be struggling, and your intimate relationships definitely going to struggle if you live with that person even more, you know. And your relationships with professors, like how are you receiving information? It actually impacts how you hear information as well. Stress does. So you hear on a different frequency. So you may interpret what someone is saying in a different way as well. So just be on the lookout for that, and keep the communication open with your peers about how they're doing from day to day.
Jinaki often says, asking how are you goes a long way. Like
Yeah.
really truly checking in with someone. It's kind of saying, how are you really, you know, because it's, you know, kind of just common in this culture to say, how are you? I'm fine, how are you?
Right, and blow it off.
Yeah, how are you really, you know, goes a long way.
And look someone in the eyes, use the ventral vagal, you know, the social engagement system. Look them in their face, eye to eye, you know, and really ask them how they're doing. You get healing from that too.
Right. Yeah, and it's, you know, it's so often a very gradual impact. And so it's kind of hard to notice when you're in it, that things are not good, and that it might be time to call in some resources. And so sometimes a friend looking at you can say, how are you really? Right. And that can go a really long way.
Right. And really looking them in the eyes, because that's all you have now with these masks on.
That's true.
So you just make that eye contact, right? And a lot of people are really struggling with these layers, right? Because there's a lot happening out here. And there's really imminent threat, like there is danger, right? And so it's not all in our heads. There is true danger. And then there's the stuff that our body responds to. And we have to let our bodies know when it is safe, right? And so creating that safe container for ourselves, and being aware, you know, being embodied, being aware of the body's sensations, the emotions that come with that, and how our thoughts trigger this sense of threat and danger and unsafety.
And I would tack on too, if someone is considering coming in for therapy, and we've mentioned all these warning signs, and they're like, ooh, that kind of sounds like me. You don't have to know why.
Right.
You know, I think sometimes people get a little stuck and they think, well, what will I talk about? Don't worry about that. That's our job. We'll help figure that out. You don't have to know why. Yeah.
Absolutely. We will totally do that.
And we won't make anyone talk about anything. You know, I think that's the other fear sometimes. It's, oh, they're going to make me come in and really just tear open old wounds, or, you know.
Right. Yeah. And then there's mistrust too. Like, you know, am I going to get the right person who's going to understand my unique situation? And that's especially important for BIPOC folk, to be able to know that someone really kind of gets what they're dealing with, and not just from a ethnicity, race perspective, but as a person in medical school, right? Being able to, one of the big pieces is making sure people are skilled to be able to manage what you're going through in your unique day-to-day movements and challenges of being in that environment as a Black man, as a Black woman. You mentioned, Millicent, earlier about being a Black man and how that may show up. But I was interested also in how Fiona saw that as a Black woman in medical school. Like, do you see there being any, I won't say like issues, because that sounds really kind of like a negative, but what does that feel like? Let's say that.
Well, I mean, you get mistaken for other things a lot, like, oh, that's the nurse, or that's some other type of worker. You have to explain who you are constantly to people. They don't believe like who you are, who you say you are. And sometimes it's not even like the white people, like, I want my white doctor. Sometimes the Black people too, they're just like, you're a doctor? Like, no, that's not what I'm used to. Like, you need to send another person. So it's like your own community too sometimes, just being
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, well, that's internalized white body supremacy, right? That's that whole piece of, or what Naeem Akbar calls the anti-self, or there's many words for it. But when you live in an environment where you get told that, people who look are of a certain race or nationality or ethnicity are inferior in training and academics or whatever that is, you're going to get people who will internalize that. And that's part of trying to maintain safety as well. It can be kind of daunting and a little off-putting to hear people say that who look like us, but it does happen, right? So yeah, did you want to add anything, Millicent, about do you have those same? Do you have those same?
Oh yeah, I've been mistaken for the cleaning person. I remember having a conversation with somebody. 5 minutes in, I'm thinking, I'm waiting to hear what they want me to do, and then like, oh, can you replace? And then it finally comes out, can you replace the shower drain? I'm like, oh no, I'm one of the med students, and like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh, you kind of look like. So I was like, okay, no problem. I just gotta, and so yeah, it definitely happens. But I will say, if I can be honest, I do the same thing too. If I see a Black attending, I'm like, oh shoot, that's Black attending. I'm shocked, because. Not because I don't know it's possible. I'm obviously training to do that same thing or be in that same position, but you just don't see it that often. So I get excited when I see a Black attending leading rounds in the morning, because I'm not used to seeing it. So I don't get upset when these things happen, within our community, because a lot of times you can see the genuine just kind of shock or oh wow, this is literally the first time I've seen this. So I get it.
I think another thing, and maybe Millicent can speak to this, but I think might be unique to women, it's probably not, but being a Black woman, I don't want to speak up too much or complain too much because I don't want to be the angry Black person. But I think for men, I assume you're allowed to be more assertive so you can speak your mind. But for me, I'm just I don't want to be labeled as the angry Black person. So it's somebody else's job to speak out on whatever injustice, not mine.
Yes. And that is why it's important to do some type of work for yourself, because that is very real. And that will make you inhibit yourself in ways that really impact your health as a Black woman, trying to skirt that stereotype threat, right? When in actuality, anger is the best way that your body tries to reach you and say, I love you. And this is something that has been an affront to your body. So if you're not in a position to really say something, you can actually go to a place later and you can actually complete that stress cycle in your body. And that's why having movement and listening to music or breath work and mindfulness work is critically important, because it helps us get back into our bodies so that we can come back and do this work from day to day. You're not an angry Black woman because you feel the way that you feel. It's just that sometimes when you're in a situation where you're in medical school and you have people who are in power, you have to learn how to navigate those environments, right? So yeah, that's a very real thing, and I hear it a lot.
Or the smiling thing. So you ain't asking men to smile. Oh my God, can I just do my job?
This smile, what's wrong with you? You can't hold your mouth any kind of way without there being judgment.
That's one silver lining to wearing masks. Fewer of those, you should smile, you look so much prettier when you smile comments. How's that for a smile?
Or if I'm not smiling, the assumption is that I'm angry. Right. If I'm just not my mind could be 12 million miles away. Somebody has said, oh, did you see her face? She looked like she was mad. What? I wasn't even thinking about you.
And then I go back to a simple, how are you?
Right. Let's find out and see
if well, I don't care. I just wasn't mad.
How are you goes such a long way.
It does. Let me tell you, that's my favorite line. How are you goes a long way. Just being able to connect, bond, engage socially. We're hardwired for it anyway. And when we don't get to do that, that sense of isolation can be daunting. So from what I hear you guys all saying, and I know we're wrapping, is that you are, there are some unique challenges, but there are some glows. Absolutely. And you are creating and have created this village of support, and you will, if you need to. Now you have some smatterings of how to kind of look into yourselves and maybe some of your peers. So you will be helping others to engage in their own mental health, and to now you are. I'm going to deem you as ambassadors to normalizing mental health now. And so, but just know that at any point we are here at the counseling center. Shawna's at the downtown office. I am uptown. And
I'm going to share my screen real quick just to give everybody the contact info for how to come see us at the counseling center. It's one phone call, 504-314-2277. And in most cases, we'll have someone available to talk with you that same day. So we work on a same-day consultation model. So if you make a phone call to us in the morning, our patient reps, Belinda and Charlesetta, will work with you to find a time, and you'll get to speak with a clinician right away. And then, that first call is on Zoom, and it's a consultation meeting. So just a chance for us to hear a little bit about what's going on and give you some thoughts, some recommendations, and hopefully by the time you wrap up that first consultation, you'll have a plan, which for a lot of people just starts to bring that anxiety down right away. We're doing almost everything on Zoom now just to keep everyone safe and protected and be able to work without masks so we can all see each other and interact really clearly. Don't forget to follow Campus Health on social media. These episodes air on IGTV and on the YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to those, you'll be able to see them every Wednesday. I try to wrap up each episode with some light humor, or my version of dad jokes usually. I think we're all feeling the fatigue for sure as we're making our way through this semester, but maybe we're just on energy saving mode. That's what I'm saying.
I like it.
She has some good ones.
They're corny, but sometimes corny is good, right?
Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure to meet both of you. I wish you the best of luck in your interviews. I know this season is a stressful one. And so I think—
But you're doing it and you're nailing it.
We're almost there. Finish line.
Yes, you're almost there. Chicka, 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 chicka. Yes, and you are. And so, and as I said earlier, if you ever need to just come and process to get your kind of consultation that Fiona talked about, can I just do a 1 and see? Or if you want to go to a graduate mindfulness group, you have our information, and please yourselves or send your people who may need this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I think this is a very important topic, and I appreciate you guys having us on to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you for coming, because I know it's you guys have a lot to do, so I am very grateful.
No worries.
I'm very excited to be here. I was talking to my friend like
so
a week
much.
earlier, and I'm like, I want to be on a podcast, because she was doing one on wellness as well, and it just fell in my lap thanks to Millicent.
Yeah. Yay!
Well, look.
Yes, this is awesome.
Thanks to all of you, and tune in every Wednesday for another episode. And in the meantime, be well.
Yes, thank you.